what does God really want from you? Have you ever thought about that? Just tried to reflect on that aspect. What does God want from me? As a young person, as a lady, as a man, as an adult, as a teenager, what does God really want out of my life? Now, this is what I tend to believe, that in terms of what I would call the hallmark of your Christian faith, in terms of the ultimate point or level when it comes to your relationship with God, one thing stands out, and that was exemplified by Jesus Christ himself. When you read the scriptures from the book of John chapter 13 all the way to John chapter 17, when Jesus comes and he's giving his final speech, his final words, just before he gets arrested and he's led to the cross, crucified, and later on resurrecting, Jesus comes and he shares such a powerful principle, that which we call love. Now, what I tend to believe is this, that the ultimate Christian goal, your ultimate Christian goal, the ultimate aspect that God would desire of you and I is this one thing: a loving union with God, a loving union with Jesus Christ. The Bible says this in the book of Mark chapter 12, verses 28. Listen to these words. A question that was posed to Jesus. At this point, Jesus was basically condemning the leadership of the nation of Israel. And at that point, they were actually asking him questions. Some of them were not genuine. So one gentleman comes across and he asks this question to Jesus. One of the teachers of the law came and had them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked Jesus this question: of all the commandments, which is the most important? Of all the commandments, which is the most important? And in verse 29, Jesus answered, the most important one is this: hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Then in verse 30 and 31, he says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Then he says in verse 31, the second is this: love your neighbor as you love yourself. There is no commandment greater than this. So Jesus comes and he sums up all the laws of Moses, all the 10 commandments in these two things: loving God, with everything you've got, and secondly, loving your neighbor as yourself. Now, the interesting thing about love, and when you look at Jesus in terms of his life, love was at the center, at the core of his ministry, at the core of his mission and purpose here on earth. And I believe that is what he welcomes us to do. And that is precisely what Jesus pointed out in this response towards this teacher of the law. That guess what? Your life, your relationship with God, it needs to be centered on love. It's very possible that you might be struggling with certain areas, certain issues upon your life. And the need at hand is, how can I overcome my struggles? How can I overcome the temptations that I have in my life? A story is told of this gentleman who, was quite a wreck, and at one point he committed his life to the Lord, and people knew that this gentleman would not make it, and somehow they gave him a few days, they gave him a few weeks, a few months, knowing very well that he would go back to his old ways. But to the shock and the surprise of every person in that community, this man, as every day and every week kept on passing by, he became stronger and stronger and stronger. So including one of them, the people who were surprised and shocked, was a pastor. So the pastor approached him and he asked him, for a long time, I've seen people, who have had such kind of struggles in their lives, not really being able to commit their lives to God fully. So what was the secret? How did you make it? And the gentleman went ahead and he said this, that the reason why I have succeeded in my walk with God is simply because of my love for Jesus. You see, when you're in love with Jesus, when you choose to intentionally love Him, all these other things seem to fall off. All these other things seem to fade away. And that is exactly what Jesus was saying, that if you desire to fulfill my will in your life, if you desire to do that which is ultimate in terms of what I would really want out of your life and to succeed, have love. If you look at every other commandment, every other act of obedience, it must be centered and established on the place of love. So may you purpose in your life, this week, this day, choose to love God and choose to love your neighbor as yourself. God bless you, and always feel free to reach out to us in case you have any need and any questions or counseling. Feel free to reach us out on the platform you have watched us on. God bless you.